Epik Mellon podcast, conversations with the real humans behind broadband networks, cybersecurity, and the future of communications. Brought to you by QA Cafe.
Okay, welcome to another episode of the Epik Mellon podcast. I'm Jason Waltz from QA Cafe, and I'm here with Peter Steinhaeuser again, which was 6 months ago at NetworkX? 6 months ago?
Yeah, it was in October.
Yeah, in October. And it was very chaotic, and it was in the middle of the show floor.
Yep.
And here we are at the Broadband Forum meeting in Hong Kong. And so it's been a while since I've been on a 12-hour difference, but yeah, here we are. We figured we'd sit down again. We actually talked about sitting down again right after we did it before.
Indeed.
To get a little bit, I don't know, a lot more things. Anyway, as always, this podcast is brought to you by my employers at QA Cafe, and Peter's opinions and my own don't reflect those of QA Cafe or its ownership. And it is brought to you by our three great products at QA Cafe, including CD Router, the industry standard test platform for broadband gateways, Wi-Fi devices, and other customer premises equipment. And look, I'm doing that without anything to read, as if I've repeated that over and over again.
I mean, that's the reason you're at the BBF, right?
That's true, right?
Yeah, I mean.
And second is CloudCheck Enterprise, which is our enterprise-grade solution for packet capture analysis that helps deploy packet capture analysis across your entire organization without relying on a patchwork of open source tools, combining Zeek and Suricata and Wireshark all into one very helpful tool with an intuitive interface that lets junior analysts work alongside experts without losing any of that important data. And finally, Packet Viewer, which lets you put the power of CloudShark into your own application. It's an OEM solution that lets you add packet capture analysis to any cloud-managed networking application or cloud security application. And we have quite a few people working on that right now. Anyway, hi.
Wow, you said all of this almost without breathing.
I know. I have to remember to breathe.
Yeah, yes, sometimes it helps.
Right.
I mean, breathing is overrated.
Sometimes I feel like, especially here, or especially at trade shows, but especially when we're constantly going, you have to not stop, and not think about stopping.
Yeah. True thing.
So I don't remember where we left off. Not that we have to have left off, but I don't think we ever got because we talked with Mika too, and so we ended up focusing a lot on CPE security. So if you remember who Peter is, he's one of the people behind the way that all of our modern home gateway platforms work. He's worked a lot on OpenWRT, and now with the prpl Foundation, you're basically doing the project management for it, right?
And now the release management.
Oh, the release management, yeah.
Which is interesting.
Yeah.
Role. Yeah. So sometimes some people say it's bringing order into chaos, but I'm not sure if it's just the other way around. But that's to be seen.
No, it is. It is the other way around. Order happens spontaneously. We're just here to make sure that the chaos doesn't explode.
Indeed. Yeah.
But I don't think we ever got into how it is that you even got to this point to be involved in any of those things.
Yeah, that was actually an interesting story. As you mentioned, we as a company, we do a lot of OpenWRT work, and we're working really with some of the founders of OpenWRT, the core maintainers. And one of the guys, he got involved with prpl many years ago, and then he didn't feel that comfortable.
Yeah.
It was prpl is very operator driven, so OpenWRT is more a community of developers, and
we talked a little bit around the culture around open source and how they take it very seriously.
Yeah. And so at a certain point he was asking me, okay, do you think you could just take over my part at prpl? I said, sure, why not? Sounds interesting. Yeah. A new challenge, and then I started that as how was the role called? I already forgot. It's weird, honestly. No, it was the prpl OS manager.
Right.
So it was more about, in prpl, it's the whole stack is called prplware, and it basically consists of prpl OS, prpl mesh, and prpl LCM.
Right.
These are the three components. So I slipped in. It also took me a little to get comfortable with it, to get to know people and understand a little bit how the community works there, because every community is different.
Yeah. No, it's true. And that's the stuff, interestingly enough, it's the stuff that drives how things work. Because I always think about, obviously Broadband Forum's the standards organization that we're the most involved in, but there's plenty more that work a little differently. And the interesting thing about the BBF is that it's like a blessing and a curse that it is has this sort of equal say policy, right? There's a lot of other organizations where it's like, okay, here's our membership fees. If you want to really steer the direction of this, give us a ton of money. You're on the board, you're steering the direction of it. Whereas here it's like all very democratized, right?
Yeah, but honestly, for a standards organization, I think it's the right approach.
Yeah.
Because it really lives from the work of the members.
Right.
And even, let's say, if a small company is a member and sending people who do a lot of work.
A lot of work.
Yeah.
Things are held together by some of the people that we've gotten to.
I have this feeling in every community, it's the individuals that keep it together.
Right.
Yeah. So you mentioned BBF. I also have a role in the RIPE community.
Oh, you do? Cool.
Yeah. I'm the co-chair of the IoT working group here, which is also something we should discuss.
Yeah, we should probably talk about that.
Yeah.
Off microphone.
Exactly.
Actually, so not everybody might know what RIPE is, but they're an extension of ITF?
No, actually not. So RIPE is basically the European organization that is distributing the IP address space for Europe and Middle East.
Ergo IPv6 and RIPE 55.
Exactly. And they also do standardization. So for routing protocols, BGP, IPv6, they play an important role.
Right.
Yeah. And it's so like, let's say, for instance, in BBF you have a lot of operators who get involved because they use the standards. So in RIPE it's more the internet and net exchanges.
Oh, okay. Cool.
Yeah. Because they develop the standards they use.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So it's kind of this, but also there it's the individuals.
Right.
Yeah. You have the same people coming from different companies over the years, but it's the same guys and they are doing the work.
No, it's true, and that happens. That happens here too, where it's like, we joke about how many companies Tim Spetz has worked for. It's like in the 20s, but he's been doing the same work the whole time.
Yeah, right. Yeah, but this is like in probably most the other industries, you meet the same people everywhere.
Right.
We also have, we have this footprint in doing a lot of upstream work for the Linux kernel. And funny story is, whenever one of the larger players in the industry is thinking about upstream, we get a call. Yeah, and it's simply we have this reputation that we have the experience, we have the footprint. You can see it in the commits in the kernel from the developers.
Right.
And it's a logical thing.
Right.
If you look for somebody, then you check who's doing code contributions, and then you talk to those people.
Right.
So it's kind of a natural thing happening. Yeah. But circling back to BBF, it's my first BBF meeting as a member, and
I couldn't remember if that was actually true or not. Because I saw it on the list and I was like, no, this is not the first time Peter's been here, has it?
Yeah, as a member.
As a member.
As a member. Yeah. So that's why I have the, it's over there, that's good. I have my dummy my dummy label,
Yeah.
I call it, which is fine. No, the interesting thing is, you remember we met for the first time in Berlin a couple of years ago.
Yep.
That was also when Purple Mesh started, when they proposed it. And then I was coming back to you guys through Purple.
Right.
Because at a certain point they were pulling in OBUSPA as the USP agent for Purpleware. And then I was talking to John, to Tim, to you. And so it's like...
Yeah. There's a gravity to it.
Exactly.
We joke about how anybody who ends up leaving for whatever reason, even trying to leave the industry, you don't.
Yeah, you know, it's like a black hole.
Yeah.
If you reach the point of no return,
there is no escape velocity.
Yeah. Except you eject your warp core and that explode. But I think this is more science fiction.
I don't know what the equivalent of that would be.
I have no idea. I don't want to try.
No, that's right. So that was when it was still Broadband World Forum is when we met.
Yeah.
Before it got looped into NetworkX. I remember that we had that first conversation because we were there showing off the USP, the first USP stuff and certification and all that.
Yeah. And at that time, the first OBUSPA, let's say the first version of it before it was called like that, I think it was developed by Aris.
Yep. Yeah. They contributed the original code.
Right.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
You see, I remember that.
Yeah. And that was what, 2018? Must have been.
Yeah, must have been 18.
Because it was before COVID.
Ah, right.
Yeah.
No, this is so weird. Yeah. In the past, we were used to say BC.
BC.
and
before COVID.
now BC means before COVID.
Yeah. It's a strange time. And we've talked a bunch on the show about how not only how radically like standards work has changed since then, but our industry, right? Because it suddenly became very important, right? Something that was not mission critical became mission critical, you know?
Yeah, I mean, this is something which is always surprising to me. I mean, if you see how software is written and how how much time you need for testing and how many cycles you need to really get it stabilized properly, and I think...
Which is made faster and more efficient by CD router, by the way.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, this is a really, really good point, and this is not advertisement, you know? No, I mean, CD router really became a core testing tool for CPEs.
Right.
Yeah, because I mean, all the CPEs are communicating with the management system, the ACS, via either TR069 or USP. And CD router is focused on just testing this. Yeah. So it's a logical choice.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's flexible.
And they got in even before I started to work there. They had gotten in very early on the ground with TR69.
Yeah.
Because obviously, like when it was made, not to go down a huge CD router tangent, but when it was made, it was like Joe, who kind of wrote the initial code for how package generated and everything. The founder, there was a lot of like PPPoE testing, right? That was like a lot of the, so it was all the core protocols, which CD router still does, obviously. But they showed up back then at the first Plugfest, at the first TR69 Plugfest. And that sort of launched that whole thing.
Yeah, but a lot of things start small.
Yeah.
So it's like somebody has a great idea, and then it grows and grows and grows and grows. I mean, we have this strange situation also with OpenWRT. I mean, OpenWRT, I was talking to guys. They met in a hackerspace in Hamburg, I think in 2004.
At hackerspace?
Yeah, it was a hackerspace actually.
Right.
And yeah, at that time the guys were meeting there, working on some projects, which was really, really cool times, because people Today it's like, how do you meet people? Yeah? Everybody's online.
Yeah.
And it's like, maybe I'm too old for that, but for me it's like meeting somebody in person is a different thing.
It's totally different. It's totally different. That's why we still do this, because I mean, I can just think of just a couple of examples, you know, about the things that we try to do. You know, I joke about us being the most fun in standards, but the reason I say that is because when somebody comes here, I want them to want to come into the fold,
right.
You know, and you can't get that experience online.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. This is the case, and I think we should get more personal, because we are losing so many opportunities.
Right. No, we should. I mean, that's half the point of this show, is to try to bring people to the reality that, you know.
I mean, what yesterday happened? Yeah, you know, Mike is working on TR4966992. Yeah, and he was looking at me and said, "I need help."
Yeah,
and I said, "Sure."
Yeah. We make the analogy all the time about, you know, remote work in the office too, because like Erica, the CEO of QA Cafe, you know, we talk about the number of times of how different our things are when I can go like this versus typing in a chat, waiting for the chat, missing the context of me typing words rather than explaining it, you know.
Yeah. I mean, the direct human interaction has so many layers. Yeah.
Right.
It's not only speaking. It's like how you look at somebody, your body language, even your tone and everything. And this cannot be translated.
No.
By a video conference or something.
It can't.
Yeah.
Not yet, anyway.
Maybe in the future we
well, we were talking about how, you know, people aren't going to want to use VR in the way that we think.
Yeah, I mean, VR honestly is a great technology, but as we did discuss, it didn't work with the 3D glasses.
Yeah.
So people try to sell TV sets, but people simply didn't like to put these glasses on.
Yeah. Right.
And now imagine a VR headset in to watch a movie.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, if you're doing construction work as your job, etc., then it's like a tool.
Right. Right.
Yeah. So it really improves the way you work. So I see that.
Oh yeah. Or like Robin Mersch, who was the previous CEO of the Broadband Forum. Him and his wife started a company that makes it's basically a VR training for medical lab techs, so they can do stuff without breaking anything first. You know, it's like a simulator.
Yeah, that's a great idea. Right. Maybe SpaceX should use some of this. I mean, I like fireworks. Don't get me wrong, but
yeah, change happens that way. No, but so just to bring it back to talking about the culture, like,
right.
So they were able to meet in person. How did that happen with Purple? Like, because and if I recall, I mean, because Purple started before COVID.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They started before COVID, and I think one of the key events, but I was not there. But what people told me was that they organized like an OpenWRT summit. So inviting the OpenWRT community, then talking about what Purple wants to do.
So who was they at the time? Do you remember? Like, was it initially driven by the gist of my question was was it initially driven by the operators, or was it driven by, you know, a niche community of the way that a lot of things get done, by the way, in the internet that people don't know, is that somebody just who is very passionate decided, we're like, nope, I'm doing this.
No, I think at that time, I really have to look it up. So don't judge me if I say something wrong. But I think it was Innovation Technologies. No, Imagination Technologies. They had a chipset IPR for not for ARM architecture. What was the other one? Goodness.
One of those. Yeah.
and they came up with the idea of let's say a carrier grade variant of OpenWRT.
Right.
This is how Purple started.
Right.
But I think it really took off after operators joined.
They did, yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
because I mean they are bringing in the real life requirements.
Right.
So before it was a little bit like floating around, let's say that way.
Right.
So everybody was saying, yeah, it's a good idea and we should do that. But as long as you don't get the people on board that are really consuming the work for real life application, it's not getting serious.
Right. You're basically doing it hypothetically rather than
exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, we see this so often. People sit on a table and think about a great idea, and everybody's happy about it. Then you try to build it, and then it's like you build a car and you forgot the wheels. You know?
Don't talk about IPv6 that way.
Oh, yeah. I had those funny moments when we were talking about packet fragmentation, I think, because there was a use case with DNS. So Google is using huge DNS records, and this simply does not work in IPv6 because it's not specified.
Right.
Yeah, and IPv6 is also a super interesting topic.
Yeah.
Because the idea is great, but since it's so different from IPv4, so everything you know about...
and we've talked about this before, it comes down to literally comes down to cultural things too, right?
Yeah.
It's like you have to have people that now have to be retrained on the way the internet works, right?
And I mean, if you have people who are used to use NAT and private IP networks to solve all types of problems...
But that was a Band-Aid and it was an accident, but accidents are sticky.
Yeah, but and now you have to tell them, look, you don't need to do that anymore.
Right.
And what do we have? DHCP-v6.
Well,
and NAT 64 and what it's like.
No.
Do we need that? It's just kind of absurd in a way.
I always had these memes of carrier grade NAT sneaking into the background of the picture, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So did that happen with sort of the OpenWRT to prpl situation? Because obviously there were system vendors who were adopting OpenWRT as their basic baseline.
Yeah.
But that wasn't initially the case because OpenWRT was originally, and correct me if I'm wrong, basically nerds, right? They're like, I want to reflash my firmware and have my own.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I think it all started with this WRT45G from Linksys, because it was a Broadcom device, and they put a Linux on it, embedded Linux, and then they got sued because they were violating the GPL. So they had to release the source.
Oh, right.
And that was the moment where all those geeks and guys were saying, hey, now I can build my own router which was actually fueling the success of the actual device.
Right, exactly.
Because it was the only box everybody wanted to have. So it was kind of really starting this kind of device types for the consumer space. Right.
And that's actually not the only open source story of that happening. That's a lot of the reason why a lot of companies end up opening sourcing their stuff is because it does that effect,
Yeah, that's true. I mean, I think the major difference about OpenWRT from the beginning was that the guys working on it, they did it in a very structured way.
Yeah.
So they were thinking about, okay, how do we do the build system? So from the beginning, they said, okay, we want people to be able to build their own firmware from scratch.
Right.
We want to make it simple. And then over the years, they were redoing a lot of things. Yeah, so they were developing new services. Then we had it was around 2008, I think, when Atheros had 80H9K, the first real good open source wireless driver.
Yeah.
Before it was Mad Wi-Fi, and then ADH9K.
Yeah.
Because before we only had the binary drivers for Broadcom
Right.
chipsets, but that changed it. And
Right.
then people suddenly started building infrastructure using OpenWRT. I remember projects in developing countries where they built 20, 25 kilometer links
Right.
using just simple hardware with huge antennas.
Wow.
I mean, they were really, and I mean, it was the cheapest way and the fastest way to bring internet to rural areas where
Yeah.
we didn't have infrastructure.
Right,
They
right.
even used solar panels for the power,
Cool.
batteries, and everything. It was like going to a how it's called, going to kind of a workshop, buying your stuff and then
Yeah.
building it yourself. And I think the flexibility of OpenWRT and also the build system then brought some of the chipset vendors to the idea, and they said, look, why don't we use this as a SDK for our stuff?
Right. Right.
Yeah. And then funny thing is that actually, if you look at the chipset vendors, everybody has OpenWRT.
Yeah.
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 Some have their proprietary SDK, some have an open source SDK, but technically, I don't know, I would say 70, 80, 90% of the gateways in the world and access points are running a variant of OpenWRT.
Right.
Okay, I mean, enterprise Wi-Fi is a different story. If you go to Cisco, Ruckus, etc., they probably use some brewed for their products. But it really it was penetrating the market slowly and quietly.
Right.
Yeah, and that I think was the reason why Purple said, you look, chipset vendors have experience with it. A lot of system integrators are using it. So why don't we use this as the foundation for the Purple project?
Right.
And build then the Purple middleware
Right.
on top of that.
So, I mean, I know the answers to some of these questions, but for the sake of talking about them out loud, what were some of the things that were like? And this is not to critique OpenWRT, but like it is what it is, and it was what it was. Like, what were some of the things where they were like, well, in order for us to consider this carrier grade, we need to do X, Y, and Z, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the actual key factors in Purple is the high-level API,
Yeah.
how it's called, which is technically the tier 181 data model.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is used on the CPE to do all system configuration processes, starting processes, installing containers, sending telemetry to the gateway.
Right.
Yeah, because this, I mean, tier 181 USP, these are the carrier technologies all the carriers are using, so it was logical to do that.
Right. Right.
And then, of course, you also talk about things like, okay, how should the bootloader look like? What is the partition layout? This is also things Purple is doing, people
Right.
are not talking a lot about.
Right.
But this is also about standardization.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
And a lot of that is about security too, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Because then you have security, you have to know where are the manufacturing data, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So often Purple is seen as a community that is building a middleware stack, but I think the primary purpose of Purple is actually standardizing the access point and CPE stack.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the software development is something that comes in as a natural part of the whole project, because I mean you need to implement it. What I also really like about the standardization efforts of Purple is that they also have the low-level API, which is mostly the standard Linux interfaces, and they kindly but thoroughly encourage the chipset vendors to comply with the standards.
Right.
Yeah, because this is actually the tricky part, and this is again where OpenWRT comes in, because the idea of OpenWT is to have a chipset vendor SDK, which allows you to just build your own services, and then you define a target platform and you build the firmware for it. And if you look at the current market, a few chipset vendors took the route, but it took several years, to say, okay, we integrate our drivers seamlessly into OpenWT by upstreaming it to the Linux kernel,
right?
And then you can pull in the kernel modules,
right?
And then it's natively available in OpenWT. But not all chipset vendors are doing that. Yeah, they forked OpenWT. Yeah.
What's rule number 1, Randy? Don't fork.
Exactly.
Right.
And by forking, you kind of lose some advantages. So this is also something that prpl is able to achieve because the operators have a certain power in the market. Yeah? So they are able to get these things moving. And we see more and more chipset vendors are considering to be more open, to comply with the open standards.
Right.
And it starts with so many things. So wireless, for instance, you have NL8 802.11. Goodness, I will never get it.
It's been a week.
Yeah.
And it has barely started.
Right. Yeah. And even here, the full support is not there. An argument you often hear is that the chipset vendor says, yeah, we implemented it because it's not upstream yet. And then our response usually is, it's okay, but then work on upstream, right?
Yeah.
Because this is, and we talked about it before. We see too many cases in the industry where people reinvent the wheel.
Yeah.
Yeah. So my vision is, I know it's never going to happen, but it's nice to have one, is that if the industry could get together and say, okay, we all need this common infrastructure, these subsystems, there's no innovation in it.
Right.
It's just it's a commodity, it's stuff we all need.
Right.
So just let's use a joint effort. I mean, at the end, prpl is doing that with a middleware stack.
Right.
But it would be great to see also kind of that work on the lower layers.
Yeah.
And then the companies could use the resources. They don't need to reinvent the wheel to innovate.
Was there a time when they could innovate on that and it actually mattered? Like,
I think it was because, but this is the interesting thing. By standardization, so standardization is kind of an equalizer.
Yeah.
Yeah. It puts away these differences.
Right.
But it still leaves room for innovation.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It does.
Yeah. So it's like it's just let's say if technology is evolving, yeah, you try out different things, and then you find a common ground where people say, okay, this is how we should do things.
Right.
And then you make a standard out of that.
Right. Right.
Yeah? So
right.
then innovation is complete.
And it's funny because I feel like a lot of the innovation, some of it is around being efficient or having certain hardware design things in mind such that the Wi-Fi is actually better, right? But also mostly now on the software side of things, when it comes to the actual human interface, not literally, not sometimes literally web interface, but not for the end user necessarily.
Yeah.
Their cloud services for the operators, right? And like having some sort of differentiation when it comes to how easy it is to fix problems that way and all that stuff. That nobody standardized those things. It's like
no, I mean,
because it's all subjective and everybody has their own needs. And
right. Yeah. And even implementing a standard on a certain platform can be innovation.
Right.
Yeah. Because let's take the example of USP. Yeah. You can pull a data model in 5 minutes, or you can do it in 10 seconds. So
right.
that makes kind of a difference in an operator network.
Right.
So optimizing things. There's always room to be creative, to find solutions. So standard does not mean that you kill innovation. No.
Right.
But you find a common ground.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and not only are there many factors. I'm thinking of an example of how it sounds like in some cases that you think about things from just a sheer computer science perspective, right? In some cases, there is a best way of doing something, right? But not when you have multiple factors that you're trying to balance for, because you have to decide which one is more important, and not when you have different needs from different people who are asking for different things, right?
Yeah, I mean, also, if you think there is a best way to do things, there's often a better best way.
That's it. We're done. We can all go home.
No, this is what I love about this industry. There's always something new happening. If you sit down with people in person, preferably, then suddenly somebody pops up an idea, and everybody's like, "Oh, yeah."
Well, you can imagine the guy behind binary search sort of shaking an old man angry fist at the sky about neural networks, right?
Right.
It was the best way.
Yeah, and maybe. Yeah, but it's like we still can try different approaches, and also having different ways to implement standards. This is also competition.
Yeah. Right.
And we need this.
Right.
Yeah. And what I like so much, what's happening in the last years, that we see competition and collaboration.
Yeah.
So competitors join forces because they benefit from the standards, but still they are competing.
Yeah. No, it's true. And I mean that's it's when I try to explain, because very often I explain what my job is, and I'm like, well, most of the time I'm doing marketing. And then the rest of the time, as Sky puts it, my teenager, she goes, my dad goes to bars to make rules for the internet, right? Mm-hmm. So when I explain that part, I'm like, yeah, it's literally all of these people who normally should not get along, right? Having a reason why they all need to get along, right? And it happened originally, I always think of the operator situation, right? Because if you think back 20 years ago when I started going to standards meetings, operators did not compete with each other in most areas of the world, right? Yeah. Especially the US, but most areas of the world, it was they were either competing entirely on technology, right? So it was like a telco versus a cable person. Yeah. And even then, maybe not because of monopolies and all that stuff. But now, they do overlap a lot. And they also work together. Right.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, if you look at it from a purely economic point of view, let's say two operators collaborate and they can cut their R&D cost by, let's say, 20%.
Right.
Then they have a competitive advantage over the third one who's not collaborating.
Yeah, which, by the way, everyone, is the reason why you should participate in standards. Fundamentally, right? Yeah. Ken's off screen. We're gonna and participate in the Broadband Forum. We're gonna take this as a clip later. Because I honestly, though, it's funny. I'm glad that's bringing back to what we started the conversation about being in person and having the human aspect. Is that my goal, and it's not just to make it more valuable for me to be here. My goal is also just I enjoy when there's more people here doing stuff. It's fun for me, right? Yeah. And so getting more people to attend standards meetings in person is something that I really want to happen, is very passionate about, right? And so having people understand the business case for why it is that they should be getting involved and being the person who is the voice first, right, is extremely important for people to realize.
Yeah. And this is also something I learned about standards, since it's people who are doing it. If everybody is like, yeah, okay, this standard, we don't like it that much, then participate.
Yeah. I know, right?
Help working on it, help improving it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it also gives you a voice in the standardization organization where you can bring in the aspects from your company. Yeah. Let's say we have different requirements. Let's say the Western telcos and operators, they have different requirements than maybe the Asian operators, and maybe in Latin America or Africa it's a different situation.
Yeah.
Not speaking about Iceland and Greenland. It's a different story. But you know, if all of us we just have our own view on things, yeah, and this is just part of the whole spectrum.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the more people we get in, the better we can check, okay, is this the right way to do it? Or maybe we can change things a little bit so it's also suitable for others.
Right,
Yeah?
right.
And that's why I entirely agree. Participation is key.
Yeah.
Yeah? I mean, it is work.
And it's fun.
And it's fun. It's fun, indeed.
You know, it really is fun. What was it, Tobin from Connectivity Standards Alliance, the people who make matter, when he was on the panel at prpl Summit, he was like, you know, we're trying to make standards sexy again. And I'm like, they are sexy.
Indeed. No, and guys, honestly, we have so much fun in the sessions, specifically with these guys.
We try.
No, you do.
True.
You don't try. You do. No, it's really fun. It's great people.
Yeah.
It's really great people here. It's a wonderful community, very welcoming. I mean, this is something I have to say. I mean, there are different communities, and the BBF community was from the start very welcoming, very friendly, very open.
Good.
No, I mean, it's a matter of fact.
Yeah.
So I felt here like in a family from the start.
Yeah, and it does become your family, like we were talking about. It's like no matter even if you end up changing companies, you know.
Exactly.
I just because you know I met my wife because we were at a Broadband Forum meeting. All of the people who I knew, you know, who are my friends. I see all of you guys more than I see some of my friends, right? At home, right?
Yeah, it is. Yeah. And then you have 3 times a year a family reunion.
Yeah.
Or the BBF meeting.
Yeah, we call it is. It's a family reunion. It's totally good. No. So like it's the being here and the participating and realizing that it. Oh, I know where I was going with that. Is that like one of the things that I had just written about when it comes to you know the different technologies and people kind of siloing themselves in an idea is a cultural difference from people who are used to doing standards, right? And it's the startup culture is a very different culture than the way that we are used to doing things, right? Because they really think that the thing that you're supposed to do is come up with a novel idea, protect it as much as possible, and then get somebody to buy it so that you get rich, right? So like, right? And so it's like, you know, regardless of what you think of patents or whatever, it's like this is a different way of realizing how to compete and how to make money, you know.
Yeah, but I mean, it's not contradictory to a startup, because also a startup could say, hey, we leverage a standard.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah? We just use it to make our idea happen.
Right.
So it can be beneficial.
Which is also a competitive advantage, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Always brings us back to the same thing. I mean, standards help us preventing to reinvent the wheel. Yeah. To join forces. Yeah. To reduce the effort for the individual members who participate in the standard. So at the end of the day, we should make things better. Yeah. We should.
Something about economies of scale.
Yeah, I mean, if I try to oversee the tier 1 data model, I'm like, oh, this is huge. So
we try to be like, don't look at it like that. You can't experience the total perspective vortex.
yeah, that's true. That's true. It can be scary.
Yeah.
Specifically when you try to read the document.
I know. Yeah.
But I mean, this standard is not meant to be read like a document.
No, it's meant to be consumed by a computer.
Exactly. This is an important detail.
Yeah. It's like, I kind of, not roll my eyes, but because I understand why it happened, but there are still people who build their data model and their data model requirements in like a spreadsheet, right? Instead of using all the tools that we have at their disposal to like.
Oh goodness, yeah. But honestly, I still have some projects where people track bugs in a spreadsheet.
Don't they know the magic of project management software?
Yeah. It's.
I try to use it. Try to make my life agile.
Right. But sometimes I think we humans, we have a tendency to stick with what we know.
Yeah. Well, it's marvelously more efficient most of the time.
Yeah, but you know, I believe in learning every day something new.
Right.
So the old way is working, but maybe there's a better way to do it.
Right.
Trying it out. Of course, this is always effort.
Yeah.
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 But I think, in a way, we are also explorers every day. Yeah? We're exploring something new. Yeah? Maybe we take the stairs instead of the elevator.
Yeah.
That could be.
It sets off a chain reaction of timelines, you know.
For instance. Yeah. Or you could decide to drive a different route in the morning to the office, just to see maybe it's nicer.
Yeah. No, I always think of. People like to be like, oh, you know, you're lucky that this happened, you're lucky that this happened. And I think back and I'm like, man, did I get lucky? No, wait, there were things that I did on purpose that actually turned out fruitful.
Yeah.
You know, like the whole reason I'm sitting here is because I made one of those choices, right? Exactly. To say something when I could have not said something, you know?
I mean, honestly, I totally share your point. This people telling you were lucky. No. Life gives us every day thousands of opportunities. It's our choice to grab them.
Right.
Yeah. And it's never easy.
It's Obi-Wan. In my experience, there's no such thing as luck.
No. I believe that. Yeah. I believe that as well.
No, and there's, you know, believe in fate or not, but I really believe that there is an energy that brings people like us together.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
You know?
Oh, yeah.
And that's why you can feel it palpably when we start doing this work together. You know?
Right.
And in the end, that makes the internet go. So, in conclusion, the subject of Epik Mellon podcast the whole time is how relationships like that are the reason why we're even talking right now over the internet.
Right, indeed.
All right, cool. I'm glad you're here.
Yeah, I'm glad I can be here.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
No, it's wicked cool.
It's fun.
What is it? Huawei's sponsoring this meeting. They're going to take us on some boats tonight around the harbor, like sailboats with the big red sails.
Yeah, they call it a pirate cruise or something like that.
Yeah. Sounds really fun.
Yeah.
We're going to do that. Unfortunately, this episode's going to come out about 2 weeks after this happens. So.
Well, maybe you can make a little add-on.
Oh, we can add some B-roll to it.
Yeah, why not?
All right. As usual, please do subscribe to this podcast. It lets me know I'm doing a good job. And if you have any questions for Peter or questions about prpl or any of those things, I'm probably going to start a thread about talking about this stuff when I do post this episode. Feel free to leave them in the comments. That's always good too. And above all, own the nerdy things that you love and have fun doing them.